let's go over the things you'll need. You'll need a piece of scratch paper, cardstock. You'll need embossing powder. I store mine in a plastic container with a plastic spoon. It just makes cleanup quite a bit easier when you store it this way. You'll also need a stamped image. This is a stamp from Hue Arts from, I believe it's their Beautiful Butterfly or Snowflake Butterfly set. And you'll need a Versamark ink pad. The first thing you need to do is press the Versamark ink pad onto your scratch paper. And similar to when you're doing regular embossing, you'll just sprinkle on some embossing powder and shake off the excess. And then use a heat tool to melt the embossing powder. Some other people who, when they do this, they actually, the minute that the embossing powder is melted, they'll apply the next layer of embossing powder. I found that that's too stressful for me, so this is just the way I do it. I then allow it to cool after it's completely melted, and I'm just feeling underneath and I'm shaking it a little bit to make sure it's cool. And now I'm going to apply another layer of Versamark ink. So I just press it straight onto it. This is layer number 2. And once again, put on some embossing powder and shake it on, and then I'll shake off the excess and heat it once again. It'll probably melt a little bit quicker this time. It's got a whole surface of melted embossing powder underneath it, so it will melt a little bit quicker this time. And so that's layer number 2. And we're going to do another layer as soon as this one's cooled off. Okay, so I'm just pressing into the embossing to make sure that it's clear. And now I'm applying more Versamark ink. This will be the 3rd layer. Sprinkling on the embossing powder. I am using a silver embossing powder. You could also do this with gold embossing powder. I've seen some white ones done that look like almost like a porcelain look. So you could use white embossing powder as well. One thing I wanted to know is that the color of your cardstock underneath might show a little bit with your stamped image. So I wanted to use a little bit of brown since that's the color I had planned for my card. This is the next. Before you make your 4th layer, you need to prime your stamp with the Versamark ink on the stamp. This does 2 things. It protects the stamp so it doesn't get too hot and melt, and it also makes it so it won't stick to the embossing powder. You can see my fingerprint on that a little bit. That's okay, it'll completely melt later. So I'm just letting this cool off completely, and I'm putting on my 4th layer of Versamark ink. I'm applying the embossing powder. You want to have your stamp close and nearby because this is where you're going to have to be quick. The minute the embossing powder has melted, you want to press your stamp into the wet embossing powder. It forms sort of a pool of, liquid. It almost looks like liquid metal. And that's what's going to create your faux metal accent. So got it all heated up, giving it a few little extra things there, and I'm quickly pressing the stamp into it. And I'm holding it down just a little bit just to make sure it cools down while the stamp is still in the embossing powder. And then I'll pull it away. And there's my snowflake. Once that's completely cool, you could trim it out with scissors really close to the edge or use a punch to punch out your image. This one is sized perfectly for a 1-inch circle punch. So that's what I'm going to use in this case. And I apologize for the blurry image there. My camera didn't focus in on it. But you can see how it punched out the little coin size faux metal accent. And thank you for joining me. That's how you create faux metal using metallic embossing powder.